it's a drug prevention coalition that we have that meets once a month, and it's different people, all different areas in the community come together, and we really work to promote the betterment of the community, being drug-free, and just promoting safe, drug-free alternatives for our kids and our youth. So it's a really good organization they've got. What I wanted to kind of do today, if you don't mind, if we'll just go around and you can just tell me your first name and why you want to be a contact volunteer. So we'll start with you.
I'm Avenel King, or Avenel.
That's fine.
I just like volunteering and trying to help other people.
Good. Okay.
My name is Sharon, and I used to be one of those on the other end of the phone.
Gotcha. So you know how important this is and how valuable it is to people. Excellent. Okay. Okay. She does a lot, doesn't she? Okay, well, great. What you'll see, I've given you a packet of information. There's some of the stuff we'll go through and actually kind of look at and do. And then some of the other stuff is just resources. I'm really big about trying to provide resources for people because what may work for one person may not work for the next person that calls. So I want you to be ready with anything and everything that may be of help. This particular time, I'm not going to focus as much on the addiction part or the adult part because I know you've got someone else coming to talk about that. So my focus is going to be just on the drug specifics and then the youth part of it as well. The pamphlets are yours. There's one on like every drug, I think. So rather than trying to memorize everything to be able to regurgitate it, that's a resource for you. So those are yours. I've got extras if you need them. So let's start with the green sheet, the first one there, the how much do you know? Take a few minutes and just read through those and check what answers you think are correct. You're going to be trained before this is over. There you go. Loretta, do you need another one? Would you like? Okay. I'll give you whatever I have left to take. Okay. Let's take a look at these. Did any of them you have to stop and think about? A little bit? Okay. And some of these may challenge what you know, so we'll talk about them as we go. Number one shot of liquor has more alcohol than a can of beer. True or false?
I said true.
I said true.
I don't drink, so I don't know.
It's false. Do you know why? It's okay if you don't. Okay. You'd heard that. You knew somewhere. Okay. Yeah, well, good. That is false, and we're going to talk about it in a little bit, but actually we focus on 4 types of alcohol: beer, wine, liquor, and wine coolers. And I'll talk to you about they're all equal, believe it or not. So people get misled thinking, oh, well, liquor is just a little bit, it's stronger. A beer can't hurt you. It's not as much alcohol in it, but that's incorrect. And so I'll explain that a little bit more in a little bit. Number 2, the effects of marijuana wear off in a few hours.
False.
I say true because I don't know. I would think that it doesn't, all these drugs don't last for hours and hours, do they?
Well, yes and no. The high effect is going to wear off pretty quickly, It's not going to last more than a short period of time. However, the effects that it can do to your body are going to last for several hours. Could even last, a day or so. Just depends on how much you're smoking and how potent it is and whatnot. Yeah, 30 days. 30 days. And this is something that's really interesting for young kids and stuff, because a lot of them don't know that. And they think, oh, it's okay, I'll just, flush it out. I'll drink a lot of water. But what they don't realize is it stays in your system. It gets absorbed into your fatty tissues, and it gets stored in those fatty tissues, and it just takes time for it to come out of your body.
I've also heard that in trying to flush your system out, they're having problems with people messing their systems up doing that.
Yeah, and because there's all kinds of products out there that say that it can get rid of the THC in the system, and it doesn't. Time is what it's going to take. So about 30 days or 4 weeks. And even now, when I talk to the students about, being able to pass a drug test and things like that, but even now, some places are, instead of just doing a urine test, they're doing a hair follicle test. And see, it'll be able to pick up more drugs, and it'll show up even better. So something to know. Okay, number 3, teen tobacco use is on the rise.
I said true.
False.
Yay, I'm glad I'm
Yeah,
on that one.
yeah, that's one that
But,
thankfully, just go with the opposite of it. No, I'm kidding. But it is on the decline. This is something that we just noticed in the last few years. There's been a big push about tobacco cessation, about tobacco awareness and the harmful effects of it. And so more and more teens are not starting to smoke tobacco, which is the really good news. Unfortunately, the bad news to that is that they're smoking more marijuana.
Yes.
So they have this misconception that, oh, well, marijuana is an herb. It's okay. It's safer. We know tobacco's bad, but they have another drug of choice. So we're really trying to promote our education, or put it out there about how dangerous marijuana is as well. Let's see, number 4, drinking alcohol is more dangerous for teenagers than for adults.
I said true.
Yes, yeah, it is. Any idea why?
Because they're younger, or?
They are, and their bodies are still developing, and something that we've just learned really in the last couple years is the brain development part of it is their brain does not stop developing until their mid-20s. For girls, it's around 24, 25. Guys, they're a little slower. They're about 26, 27. I know. No, but they found that brain development is huge. That's crucial. And the last part to develop is the frontal lobe, and that's the part right here, kind of behind the skull, and that's the part that controls judgment, rational thinking, decision making, things like that. That's why a lot of times, you ever know teenagers when they're running around being reckless and they're doing things, and you go, why didn't you think about that? Didn't you think about the consequences? And they're like, no. Well, technically their brain's not developed enough, so that's a really weak area for them. So something to keep in mind. We tell teenagers about this, and we're saying, if you're putting chemicals into your body and the way that the brain works with the neurotransmitters and all the fancy stuff, it will latch on to that drug, and it will start to crave that drug even more. So rather than putting in the healthy vitamins and nutrients and stuff, if you're putting in the alcohol or any kind of drug, you're much more likely to get addicted, and get addicted quicker, and be less likely to be able to quit. There's, I think it's with tobacco, it's about, if you can wait till you're over the age of 18 to start smoking tobacco, first of all, your chances of doing that are much less likely. Most people are not going to start smoking once they're 20, 30 years old. Tobacco companies know that too, so they target the young people and the teenagers. But if you do not start till after the age of 18 and you try to quit, you're going to have about a 90% chance of being able to quit successfully. But if you start at a very young age, like 13, 14, 15, really anything before 18, and try to stop later in life also, you have about a 10% chance of being able to quit successfully. So it's not that it can't be done. I know people that it's been done, but the chances and the way that it affects the brain and the body, and that nicotine addiction, because that's one of the worst addictions to be able to quit. It is.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's see. Number 5. A person can die from doing cocaine just one time.
True.
I said true.
Yeah, that is true. And this is something I tell the students I work with, is you don't know how a drug's going to affect your body. You don't know what it's going to do. You don't know what kind of reaction you're going to have. Just like a prescription drug, just like, exactly. And I always tell them about Len Bias, the basketball player. I think he was playing for Maryland, yeah. And he got signed to go pro. And he signed and went out celebrating and tried cocaine for the first time and ended up dropping dead on the court the next day from a heart attack. So cocaine is a drug that affects the heart a lot. So you just never know what a drug can do to you. Number 6, because alcohol makes you feel happy, it can't be a depressant. False. It is false. It is a depressant. So that doesn't mean that it's going to make you feel depressed so much that it's going to slow your body down. It depresses the functioning of your body. So that's a good note to make. The nicotine that is in tobacco acts as a stimulant. And I always say smoking starts with an S, stimulant starts with an S. That's how I try to get my students to remember it. And the same thing, drinking starts with a D, depressant starts with a D. So whatever it takes to help you remember or whatever. But again, it doesn't make you depressed, it just slows your body down. Okay? All right, number 7, all psychoactive drugs and substances are illegal. Correct. Yep, correct. Yeah, there's lots of prescription medications out there, and there are some drugs that can be monitored by a physician and are okay. All right, number 8, alcoholism and drug addiction are diseases. True, absolutely, very good. And this is something I always try to get people to understand. It's something that can be passed on in families. It's something that there's certain characteristics, and alcoholism fits every single one of them. Characteristics of diseases, and alcoholism fits them all. So it is something, and that sometimes that's hard for people to get their heads around. They think, well, if someone wants to quit, they could quit, but it's not that easy. Okay, and especially with young people, they have a hard time grasping that because they think, well, if mom and dad, loved me, they wouldn't do this. They'd stop drinking, and it's like, well, no, it's not that easy. All right, number 9, cigarettes are not physically addictive. Big false, yeah. Highly addictive. Number 10, marijuana contains over 400 chemicals.
I said true, I don't know.
It's true.
It is true?
It is
I thought that
true.
was cigarettes.
Marijuana, actually, and the scary part is a lot of those chemicals are carcinogens, which means they're cancer causing. So that's actually very scary.
Well, how is that? I mean,
Well, a lot of it, and I don't know the actual chemicals. I couldn't tell you all 400 by any means. The main one that we really talk with the students about is the tetrahydrocannabinol, which is the THC. But
you're talking about the actual marijuana.
Like marijuana.
Plant itself, not what you put on it, but what it itself.
Well, whenever a person's smoking marijuana or however they're consuming it, smoking is the primary way. A lot of times there's chemicals that are produced in with it. Depends on, like you say, what's put on it when it's growing, things like that. But then when it's burning, there's chemical reactions that occur, just from the burning that creates, that's why I like the secondhand smoke and things like that, both from tobacco and marijuana. Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's scary because that's our.
Why do people do it for medical reasons?
That is
it grown differently if it's for medical reasons?
It's a huge debate because there's some people that will say, well, I'm stressed out, I need marijuana, and they may or may not really have a need for it. They just are using it recreationally and saying they're using it medicinally.
A lot of people it helps with cancer people. They don't eat.
I know my
and
brother
it makes them gives them the munchies, as they say, the munchies, and they eat.
Right, and it's kind of one of those. There's a lot of really healthy things that you can do that are going to help you to feel better and do. There's always a healthy alternative to everything, and so some people that's the easier way.
Because vitamins make you hungry. They'll boost your metabolism.
Yeah, and it's a big debate. California obviously is legal there, but their policies, it's not legal. People can't just have as much marijuana as they want. Different counties have different, laws about what you're allowed to have. Like I know some you can have as much as 25 plants for recreational use. Okay, and then there's others that have what they call house grows, where people will go buy these nice houses in nice, quiet neighborhoods, and they will then pretty much gut them, and no furniture or anything in them, and they will just set it up as basically a marijuana farm. They can just grow all the marijuana. You walk in, and there's thousands of plants of marijuana.
Walk through the door.
Yeah, and see the thing, yeah, they don't, and it's in a neighborhood where people don't suspect this is going on. So that's what the DEA is going after. And I try to get the students to understand that just because it's legal, because California's not the only state, there's about 13 states. Just because it's legal on a state level doesn't mean that it's legal on a federal level. So technically the DEA could go in and get you for your 25 pot plants. However, they're not going to be likely to go after that. They're going to go after the big bus.
The sad part is, just because it's legal doesn't mean it's good.
Right. And I try to tell them, I say tobacco's legal. It's a plant, but it's not good for you. So yeah, it's all in what kind of argument you want to make about it.
But does it really help people medically? Like, they say now you can take it for glaucoma. I have glaucoma, but I don't think I'd smoke it.
Oh, that's the worst thing they could do.
And see, that's another thing. We always know there's other things you can do that's going to help with that. So, yeah. I don't know, ladies. I don't know. And it's scary because I think there's becoming more and more of an acceptance for it. And that's why we're trying to make a big push to raise awareness about it. You know, people can make whatever decision they want about it. We're not trying to decide for them, but we want people to make informed decisions, because even if you're a person is smoking marijuana and then gets behind the wheel of a cart, that's just as dangerous as driving under the influence of alcohol. So we really want people to understand that's still drugged driving, and you know, and I wouldn't want someone smoking a joint and then doing surgery on me, or flying an airplane, or you know. And sometimes it really makes you stop and think, and because we're starting to lower our standards and our expectations and what we will tolerate, and unfortunately, I'm afraid it might come back and get us. It'll backfire. Yeah. Okay, number 11. The majority of high school seniors have smoked marijuana in the past month. After all this talk that I just said, actually they're not. Most students, even though there is a push, it's kind of like the students that are smoking, there seems to be more that are starting to turn to marijuana, unfortunately. However, most students are not smoking. It's just the ones that tend to be the ones that are starting to try marijuana. And then number 12, most high school students have had 5 or more alcoholic drinks in the past month.
True. I put true too.
It's false. Yeah, same thing. Most students are not drinking. Most students are not drugging. Okay, so that's really good news.
Yes, it is.
And a lot of times students think, well, yeah, that's not true. I see it all the time. And I try to get them to understand, who are you hanging out with? If you're hanging around people that are drinking and smoking and doing risky behavior, you're going to think that's the norm. But if you're hanging around people that are not doing those things, you think that's the norm. So it's all in what you're exposed to.
That's true.
Yep. All right, well, we will move right along. Again, some of these things in here are just resources for you. The blue sheet, this is talking a little bit about the dangers of the smoking. It has some good points about what will happen. Just within seconds and minutes of stopping to smoke, your breathing gets better, your respiratory function, all that. Your heart function is all affected by this. You're shaking your head, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true, because like when I go to church, and I'm around church people, and I'm not smoking, I can feel the difference, and like class or whatever, there's a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
Yep, and just, there's a lot of damage that is done to the body with nicotine and the tar and all the chemicals from smoking cigarettes. However, the good thing is once a person quits, the body is so amazing that it can actually start to heal itself. It depends on how long you've been smoking and how much damage is done, whether or not you'll be able to come back to a point of full recovery, full functioning, things like that. But the sooner someone quits smoking, the better off they are long term, because their body can start to heal and kind of repair some of that damage, which is really good news.
You know what amazes me though, is like my aunt just went through a triple bypass, and they checked her lungs and everything, and this woman has smoked many, many, many years. And they said, your lungs look great.
Yeah.
How is that?
I don't know.
And that amazes
And that
me.
happens. I've known people like that, and people that will get lung cancer but never smoke their life. In their life.
Never touched.
Yeah. So I don't know. They must have some good genes or something that protecting them.
Show all this to my mom.
Well, you're going to love what else I've got for you then. Well, tobacco, one thing that I also really like to make clear with folks that I'm talking to is the cost of tobacco. That really grabs people because people know whether or not tobacco, chewing, smoking, whatever, whether or not that's healthy for you. People tend to know that information. They don't really stop and think about what the cost of it is. So there is a brochure here. It's a little bit dated just because I think it has $4 a pack. Yeah, and we know tobacco is not $4 a pack anyway. Maybe some cheap ones, but the average is about $5 a pack. Well, I say unfortunately, but
No, mine's only like $2.89.
okay. What kind is it?
Palmo.
Okay, yeah, but like your Marlboro and some of the
Oh,
name,
yeah.
those are going to be, so on average,
Yeah.
about $5 a pack. And just to give you, if you smoke a pack a day, 1 pack a day for a week, there's 7 days in a week. So if you do $5 times 7 days, that's $35 a week. And so just because I don't want to tell you the wrong things, if you do $5 a day for 30 days, which will be a month, that's $150 a month. Already I'm thinking that's way more than. Then if you do $35 a week, we said that it was $35 a week times 52 weeks in a year, that's $1,820 a year. That
No,
is
I don't do
literally
that much. I can't
going up in
afford it.
flames, going up
I
in
can't
smoke.
afford it. My mom and I split the carton.
Okay,
Yeah,
and you know what? Down here, especially in Virginia, our taxes are so low and our cost of cigarettes is so low that people, and I used to work at a store where people would come down and they would buy cases of cartons, take them back up north and sell them, or take them back up north just for themselves because they were so cheap here.
Yeah, if you get
'Cause
caught selling them, you're going to jail.
I know, we knew some people. But look at where we live. You know, tobacco industry is huge here. And so it's a much tougher battle to fight in Virginia. But all we can do is educate people about it and hope that they'll make good choices for themselves. This is a quick kit that I will give you. I think you'll pass one back. Would you like an extra one to take? Okay. These are just some good resources, and I have more if anyone would like them.
I would, because my son,
Okay.
my son has tried to quit smoking,
I
Okay.
need one more.
Okay.
and he cannot do it
Thank you.
for nothing. And then I have 3 sons, 2 of them smoke.
Ooh, there's gum in here.
And the oldest one's had triple bypass.
Mm.
But he decided to quit smoking and then started using snuff.
Okay, I'm glad you brought this
That's
up.
no good.
A lot of times people think, well, I won't smoke tobacco because I know how dangerous it is, but I'll chew tobacco instead. And that's a whole nother realm of problems because you're still at risk. It's still got the nicotine in it, and you're still at risk because what people do, they'll get a little pinch and they'll put it right inside their lip, and then they suck on it. Well, the nicotine is so concentrated right in that area that it's getting absorbed into the gums and can actually cause different kinds of cancer and stuff in the tongue, mouth, throat.
You gotta deal with the dentist and
I just had a friend that actually had cancer in her salivatory glands. Now, she did not smoke, drink, nothing. But I didn't even know you could get cancer in your salivatory glands. But bladder cancer is one that's connected with smoking. Of all things, bladder cancer. So, and there's all kinds of things that, I forget the name of it, but we always called it the black foot, and kids love it because they think your foot like turns black and falls off, but it doesn't. But like you lose the circulation in your toes and your extremities and stuff, and people can actually have to have like toes amputated and stuff.
Both of her legs amputated
Oh.
before she died.
Wow.
She was just a chain smoker, but she had cancer also, and she was a real bad diabetic. But
It's two
before she
dangerous
died-
things, yeah.
And she died at the age of 56.
Wow.
And by that time, she had had both her legs amputated.
Wow. And that just goes to show what a powerful addiction it is. Because nobody wants that, but they can't just stop. So, yep. The quick hits, there's all kinds of stuff in there. You'll see the chewing gum is obviously keep the mouth busy. There's little doodad things. Just same thing, keeping the mouth busy, something to pull on, to play, to stretch with your hands. That's what.
I'll definitely give this
I
to
love
my
it.
son.
There's silly putty,
Because-
same thing, keeping your hands busy. There's toothpicks and straws, things like that. That's something to chew on.
Wonderful.
And there's a little bit of information in there.
Excuse me.
These come from the Tobacco Use Control, TUCP, Tobacco Use Control Policy Program. And that's something that we got a grant to put out some education in the community and provide these kind of resources. So You're welcome. Use it, pass it on, whatever. You can have it to tell
Definitely
people.
giving it to my son.
Yeah, tell people. If they call and talk
I
about
can
it.
imagine what the kids say when
I
they go
know. We had teenagers put these together for us doing some community service, and they're going, "What is this for?" We had to explain everything to them. Like, we're not being funny. We're gonna check on you again. One of the best things that comes from this, the TUCP stuff, is this is a hotline that's come out, I think, within the last couple years, is my understanding. The 1-800-QUIT-NOW, there's been a lot of publicity of this. I hate that the copy's not any better, but there's a couple websites down here that you can check out as well. But this is great because this is a resource 24 hours a day that people can call at any point if they have questions, if they're having a craving and they want to talk to somebody. If you want to pass it on as another resource for people.
I'll give this to him too.
Yeah, please. Any questions about tobacco?
It's nasty.
Yeah, it's one of the most addictive. Well, we'll take a look at alcohol. The yellow sheet, I'm not really going to go over it, but it talks about all the different ways that alcohol affects your body. If you'll look over on the back, I do want to take a look at this. This is what I was calling the drink equivalency. Again, there's the 4 types that we really focus on. The students always say, what about moonshine? And I'm like, that's a whole nother ballgame.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so beer, wine, liquor, and wine coolers. And what it is, liquor is pure alcohol. And so liquor, in its purest form, when someone consumes liquor, it's usually a small amount, like a shot. That same amount of alcohol is also in beer, wine coolers, and wine. It's mixed with other products that takes it longer to consume it. And that's why a lot of times people think, oh, it's no big deal. Think of a packet of hot chocolate. If you've got hot chocolate in its dry form, you've got hot chocolate, right? Okay, if you pour that hot chocolate into some water or some milk and stir it up, you still got the hot chocolate, right? It's just now it's in a liquid form and you've got to drink it. It's going to take longer to consume it, correct? That's the same concept with the alcohol, okay? So that's a good fact to know, is just that they all have the same amount of alcohol. Now, this is a standard serving size, meaning 1.5 ounces of liquor, a 12-ounce beer, 5-ounce glass of wine, 12-ounce wine cooler. That does not mean a 40-ounce beer is the same as a shot of liquor. Okay, these are standard serving sizes. There's some alcohol that has a stronger alcohol content. That would not fall under the standard serving size. I'm trying to think, is it Ice House or Coors has more alcohol content than a typical beer? So
Foster's.
yeah, I can't remember all the names of it, but there's some, and it's just good to pay attention to because they're not all created equal, but the standard serving size equivalency shows that they are all equal. And so this is good to know, especially for young people, because they really do. They think, well, if I just drink beer, it's no big deal. Liquor's the hard stuff. That's the bad stuff. So, all right. Moving on to the purple sheet, talk a little bit about the different types of drinking. This continuum of use is kind of good to just know what the typical pattern of drinking is. Nobody wakes up one day and says, I'm going to be an alcoholic. Okay, so it usually starts, it's a process. It starts out slowly. Usually, a lot of times people will not drink. They'll abstain. Maybe religious reasons. It may be personal reasons. It may be they're young. They know it's illegal. There's all kinds of reasons people don't use. But then at some point, they may start to experiment. It might be the friends inviting them over saying, hey, we're out of school today. Why don't you come over to my house? My parents are working. We can get in there. We can get beer out of the fridge, or we can get in the liquor cabinet. So experimentation starts to occur. Usually there's not much harm done in this. It's a matter of just tasting it, that kind of thing. It's not until people are starting to actually consume the alcohol that'll kind of push it into the occasional use. When they're actually starting to drink, more than just a sip or two, they're actually consuming an alcoholic beverage. And the experimentation, it turns into occasional when it's starting to develop a little bit of not necessarily a pattern, but it's starting to be more often. Maybe it's just on weekends, or maybe it's, when so-and-so's out of town, they're able to get together without parental supervision. The occasional use will turn to regular use. This starts to get into the occasional and regular. This is where a little bit of like the social drinking will start to occur. Even adults will engage in social drinking. Doesn't necessarily happen every time that they're in a social setting, but it may, like when people go out to eat, they may consume a beverage. They may consume alcohol when they're watching a game or watching the race or things like that. That starts to get into the regular use. When there's a pattern that's starting to form, they don't necessarily get drunk, but they are consuming alcohol. Yeah, okay, so the regular use, and then it would get into abuse. This starts to be when people are losing control. They're actually drinking more than their body can handle and more than their body can metabolize the alcohol. This is where I add in binge drinking, because you got your social drinking, your ritual drinking, that kind of experimentation, occasional use, when folks are just trying it, or when they're using it like at communion at church, or they have champagne at a wedding or something like that. As you get more into the regular use, that's your social drinking. Abuse is where I'd put binge drinking. Do you guys know what binge drinking is? Yeah, drinking. They changed the standards. It's about 4 drinks within a 2-hour period for women and 5 or more drinks in a 2-hour period for men. They used to say 4 to 5 drinks in one sitting. Well, if someone's at a bar for 6 hours at one sitting, then 4 or 5 drinks is not going to really be binge drinking. But that's why they shortened it down and they said within a 2-hour period, because that's a lot of alcohol. A typical average size adult can metabolize about 1 alcoholic drink per hour and be okay. So when a person sits down and they're drinking several shots, or they're getting Long Island iced teas, which is 1 drink, but it's full of alcohol and very little, there's no tea to it, then that's a problem. That's going to affect their ability to function and all that. So it does affect their behavior. But the binge drinking, this is something that we really talk to students about, because that's where we see the biggest problem, especially like college age and even some, high school party age and stuff. But very, very dangerous. And a lot of times people, especially young kids, they think drinking 1 alcoholic beverage a day is worse than going out and drinking a 6-pack, one Friday night. They don't understand that a person can metabolize that alcohol. They can process it. Their body, an adult, can handle small amounts of alcohol and be fine. They think, well, they're drinking every day. They must have a problem. So it's the binge drinking that is the most dangerous, because when you put so much alcohol into your body that you can't handle it, that's doing damage to your body. Okay, and they don't a lot of times understand that. But then that abuse can get into what we call heavy drinking, where you're drinking a lot in one sitting, and then the heavy drinking can lead to problem drinking, which is exactly what it is. It's where it's causing problems in your life, and then which can lead to dependency. Okay, and this is where you're actually addicted to it. You feel like you have to have it to be able to function, both mentally, physically, everything. Any questions about this? I know it's kind of a lot. I was using a lot of terms, but everybody familiar with hangovers? Mm-hmm. Okay. I had one of my students. He had watched a movie, and he goes, "A hangover's like, it's not when you're drunk today; it's when you were drunk yesterday." And I was like, "Well, that's probably the best definition of it." Yes. Blackouts. Familiar with blackouts? When a person will drink so much alcohol that it affects the part of the brain that controls the memory and the I'm losing my words today. But I know it affects your memory and just your ability to think and function. The scary part about blackouts is people normally will be able to act normal, per se. They'll be able to talk to you, have a conversation, but they will have no idea. They will not remember anything that happened. And this is really dangerous with binge drinking, and we see this a lot on college campuses, unfortunately. I had to tell a personal story. I had a roommate one time in college. I had come home for the weekend, and she had gone out. And she called me at like 2 o'clock in the morning one night and was telling me all about this wonderful guy she met and all this stuff. And I had no idea. I just knew she'd been out partying. Well, the next day I called her to check on her because I knew she'd been drinking a lot. And I said, well, how did it work out with that guy? And she's like, how'd you know about him? And I was like, you called me. She's like, no, I didn't. I said, yeah, you did. And when she went back and checked her phone, sure enough, so that's a blackout. And I talked to the students about this because some of them, especially if they're children of a substance abusing parent, um, that's a lot of times when promises get made, because if mom or dad's, 3 sheets to the wind, they're not so worried. They'll say whatever, they just, whatever. And it's not uncommon for promises to get made. To say, yeah, I'll go buy you this. Yeah, we'll go to the store later. Yeah, you can go over to Johnny's house if you want to. And then later, when those promises are not kept, mom or dad says, I didn't say I was going to buy anything for you, or I didn't tell you you could go to so-and-so's house. There's that misunderstanding, because really they may have been functioning just fine. And it's hard to tell when a person's in a blackout. I don't really know if you can tell when a person is. So that's something I like to explain to kids to help them to understand a little bit better about the situation that they're in. But blackouts can be very scary. Passing out, obviously when a person gets so much alcohol, it's the body's way of protecting yourself and keeping you from dying, hopefully. It's an attempt to keep you from dying. Because if you are unconscious, you're not able to continue drinking. And the scary part about passing out is when a person passes out from alcohol, they are 2 drinks away from death. That's how serious it is. Because what happens is it slows the body down so much, and eventually the body, it's like the brain and the heart and the lungs, all that, they're miscommunicating. The messages are getting there so slow that eventually your heart can actually stop, okay, which is very scary. And that's why it's never a good idea to leave someone if they're drinking. Never let them sleep it off, because they may go into a deep sleep and their body actually slows down so much that it stops working. Another part that's dangerous to that is if they have alcohol poisoning, because a person can actually get alcohol poisoning. It's a toxin. That's why they call it intoxicated. It's a toxin you're putting into your body. And just like there's all kinds of toxins we put in our bodies, but thankfully our bodies can process them out relatively quick and do its natural thing. It's just like with food poisoning. You put something in your body that's going to make you sick, your body's going to naturally try to get rid of it. Same thing with alcohol. You put too much in your body, it's going to try to get rid of it. And if you're passed out and you're unconscious and you get alcohol poisoning, what do you think could happen? Yeah, you could actually choke on your own vomit and die. And that's, we don't ever want to see that or hear about that happening.
That's when they get sick too, they're throwing over sick.
Yep. And you can see on the yellow sheet, there's a little bit, like I said, talking about all the different ways that it affects the body. So I'll leave that as kind of a resource for you. Any questions about any of that? Yeah. One thing I will talk about just real quick, a little bit having to do with addiction. People don't always understand. They think this is classic with cigarette smoking, but it really occurs with any drug. And I'll just use a drug that we're all familiar with, which is caffeine. Caffeine is a drug too. The way this works, this black line, we've all had drugs this is going to be, where you would, like your average feel good, you're no high, no low. You're right where you're supposed to be. When a person has caffeine, they may have, let's say you have a cup of coffee or a soda, you may feel a little bit of energy rush, right? We typically do. That's usually why we drink caffeine. Well, what happens then within a few hours? Yeah, we kind of crash. So what happens is you're going to come way down here. Well, then you can either have another cup of coffee or just give it some time, and you'll kind of come back to that. You'll level back out again. All right? Now, with cigarettes, we see this a lot. Well, people will say, oh, I'm really stressed out. I need a cigarette. So they'll have a cigarette, and then what's going to happen like when they're starting to come off of the nicotine, what's happening?
Gotta have another.
Okay, how do you start to feel? Okay, what else? Okay. Okay. And then what is the natural response to do? Yep. Okay. again, you're going to start to come off of that. Everything below this black line is signs of withdrawal. This is when people are going through the withdrawal, whether it's caffeine, whether it's nicotine, alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, whatever. There's always, for whatever high there is, there's an equal and opposite low. Okay? So this is where it gets, whether it's nicotine or whether it's alcohol, whatever, they get that high feeling, and you ever hear people say, well, I'm stressed, I just need a cigarette, or whatever, it'll make me, it makes you feel well, what's happening is it's really withdrawal from the nicotine already. It's not that you're up here and you want to come back to being,
Well, stress must make
and it may be, it depends on how your body's probably processing it. But same thing with alcohol, and what tends to happen is people will use this, and they don't like those withdrawal feelings, so they'll use again to get that high feeling again. And then as they start to come off of it, they'll use again. And that's a lot of times how addiction occurs with whatever drug of choice it may be. Okay? Does this make sense? This is what we call the rebound effect. Then the other thing, I'll use binge drinking. Let's say that someone goes out and they have a really bad night. So what kind of low are they going to have? Yeah, this is when you see people that are hungover for a couple of days. Yep, very good point. And this is something I don't have enough paper. But it's going to take it, you can tell, it's going to take a lot longer. It can take up to 72 hours for the alcohol to leave your system after a very busy night of drinking. Okay? And again, it's just, we're not doing our bodies any favors in these situations. But I hope this will help you understand kind of the psychology behind addiction. That it's really not a matter of, I'm stressed, I want to come back down to feeling good. It's, I'm withdrawing, I want to come back to feeling good. So
How would people do that to feel so terrible?
a lot of times they don't, well, part of it's the addiction. If it's an actual addiction, it's the disease, they can't help it. I know some people that would drink like this, and they would have nights like this, and they would have the moments where they're hungover and sick, but then they'd get up the next morning and do it again. They'd start over the next day.
What do you do when you're stressed out? What do you do?
Listening to music, self-help tapes,
That's
it.
or sugar. Now,
Yeah.
sugar's my,
Well, yeah, and when we eat, we're not putting carrots and, broccoli in our mouths. We're putting, like, big old bowls of ice cream with chocolate syrup and some pizza and, like,
but the
yeah.
trouble with me though, if I eat anything sweet in the morning, I have hypoglycemic, and it'll drop just
Mhm.
like.
Yeah.
See, you're
and
doing
it's
it too.
just, but then I say, I can't go through that. I'm scared because if I'm driving or going somewhere and my sugar drops.
Yep.
and
But if
You have to be
get
very
real
careful to
stressed
keep it
again,
even.
Do you do it again to
No.
yourself?
No, I may wait months before I do it again.
But you do it again.
Because I'll forget and then I'll think, oh my God, I can't do that. I have to make sure I have something in my car. But thank God I'm not addicted to alcohol, drugs, or cigarettes, because I'd be a basket case. So.
It makes your life a lot easier without it, that's
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure.
I have
does.
enough problems
I
with
learned
that
a
and
long-
another one on.
I learned a long time ago I could be addicted to mud. I have a very high addictive
Some people do, and
personality.
I had a friend that was was addicted to alcohol, and she's been in recovery now for many years. But I guess it's trans addiction would be food. She gained a lot of weight after that, and that's just simply because people with addictive personalities are gonna be addicted to something. Now, whether it's running, whether it's shopping, whether it's gambling,
not
whether
like
it's
me,
drugs.
It's always
Yeah,
hard.
they tend to find because even if a person can get a grasp on one addiction, they a lot of times will transfer it to something else. So it's good to know that information because then that kind of helps you get a better control and have a better sense about what's going on with you and your actions. Yeah. So yep, you know. Okay. The next green sheet, the tips to help you stop using drugs and alcohol. Again, it's just more so just information. We're not really going to get into too much with the addiction stuff today. But just some resources on the back is just some ideas about what to do instead of drinking, because a lot of times we're creatures of habits just by human nature. And so if you're used to going by the bar after work, that's what you know to do. And so you have to figure out how you're going to break that. Thank you. Yes, break that pattern. So these are just some ideas, and they're kind of generic, but you can add any that you think might be helpful. But sometimes it's just good to talk to somebody when they're having a rough moment. You can say, oh, well, why don't you try doing this instead, or something. The orange sheet is just talking about prescription drugs. This is another huge, huge, huge problem that we are seeing on the increase. And it's not just in this area, it's a nationwide problem, unfortunately. A lot of effort is being done to try to raise awareness about this and teaching people how to properly dispose of their drugs. Do you guys have any idea what are proper ways to dispose of prescription drugs?
Throw them down the toilet.
You're not supposed to do that.
I don't
Yeah,
do.
and here's the thing, and this is why it's misleading. Even hospice, I know some hospice organizations will tell you to do that.
Yep.
And it's not because we don't know any better now, it's just this is such a new problem that has just exploded. And the thing is, I know it's not really new. I mean, every generation goes through patterns of drug use of some sort. It's just this has really exploded again. And we're having so much more of like the ADHD medications that are kids have access to because so many of them are on the medications themselves, painkillers, things like that. Also, so we're trying to, there's a big push just nationally to try to get kind of an understanding of what is the correct way to dispose of it. Some people will tell you to put them in used kitty litter or it doesn't have to be regular kitty litter, used coffee grounds. Either one of those, because it acts as a bitterant, and nobody's really going to go through kitty litter either to try to get out pills. The used kitty litter would probably be the best. I could donate some if you need it. Yeah. So that's one thing, and put them in like a coffee can or something that they're not going to be able to get absorbed into the land, the ground, once they're like put in the landfill. The thing about that can still be dangerous because it's still not really disposing of them well, and the can could always leak. It could get in the ground. The thing with the water is that it could get into your water system. And when you're flushing narcotics down the drain, that's a big problem that can come from that. The best thing that we are finding, and we're trying to really promote this and do more and more of these in the community, is the drug take-backs that go on. They really started it, I think last year was the first year that people really kind of got it together and said, oh, this is what we can do, and they started partnering with different agencies. And even locally, we had the DEA come down, and they did a drug collection, and what they do, they dispose of them. We did one with the DEA, and we did one just with local law enforcement, and the local one, they took them, and I think it went to Lynchburg, and they put it in an incinerator, and they disposed of it that way. But we've got one coming up, I think October 29th. I think if that's the last Saturday in the month, there's one from 10 to 2, and I would look for information about that. I know they're going to try to get billboards out and get some publicity, but I think it's 10 to 2, I think, at the Sheriff's Department, at I'm drawing a blank, but yeah, where the Sheriff's office is and stuff. And you just come, you drop off.
The one here?
No, in the county.
Administration building.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
the
not,
big
it's
one,
next.
Kings Mountain Road.
It's a Kings Mountain Road, yeah,
Okay,
the
yeah.
courthouse and.
Yes,
all that.
courthouse is next door.
Yeah.
I'm just drawing blank, I'm sorry.
Jail.
But what they have done in the past, and this is why we love working with the DEA on this, because you just simply come, you drop them off, no questions asked, you leave. That's done. It's a really, really good way to get rid of any kind of prescription drugs you got in your house, and they take anything. So if you've got cough medicine, you're just like, I don't really know what to do. It doesn't matter whether it's vitamins, whether it's prescription drugs, whatever. If you want to get rid of it, we would rather you bring it to us and let us dispose of it than to maybe pour it down the drain or do something. And
That'd be a
not
trip
sure.
if somebody showed up with illegal drugs. I just want to get out of this.
Well, yeah, we laugh because sometimes we'll say it's a drug take back, and they're going, really? Do you have anybody show up? And we're like, prescription drug take back. Yeah. But it's really convenient. And another thing, I know in Franklin County, we just did this in June. We set up a drop box. It's inside one of our local pharmacies, and people can come in anytime. As long as the pharmacy's open, they can come in and drop prescriptions. And they have it monitored with cameras. And usually if the pharmacist knows that there's been drugs dropped off, then they'll call town police to come empty it, so it's not just lingering in there. But we've had a really good response with that, and that's only been there a few months. So the more that we're learning about this and how to kind of help control it, the more things like that will be put into place. So just keep your ears and eyes open, but and know that this is a huge problem, and we each can do our part to make sure that we're not leaving drugs around that kids or even other adults could come in and even sneak in one or two at a time. You know, sometimes people don't miss it when you just sneak in a little bit. They notice when the bottle's gone. They're not going to notice when they're just taking one or two. So, goodness. All right, any questions? All right. Let's see. I want to talk a little bit about what to do. You know, if you got parents calling saying, what do I do about my kid? I'm noticing this. This white sheet, this is probably one of the best things, you know, tell a parent. Because sometimes parents, they're so concerned, they may overreact. They may just be acting out of fear. They're not sure what to do, how to handle it. You know, get the facts first. That's one of the main things I tell them. Don't panic. Get the facts. Make sure that they know that their child is using drugs. Because sometimes kids do not make the best decisions. We already know that. We can now blame that on their brain development. But somebody may have a pack of cigarettes because their friend gave it to them to hold because they know that they couldn't have them at their house, that their parents would catch them with it. And so make sure you know what's really going on. That's what I would tell parents. And then figure out how you're going to approach them. You know, think it through. Don't just, so much of the time we want to react. Just because, again, our emotions are going strong and, you know, we may be excited about the situation and maybe even angry about the situation. So we just want to make sure that we stay calm and actually try to talk to the child rather than just lashing out at them or discipline them, punishing them. Okay. The yellow sheet, signs of substance use in youth. These are just some good things to look for. However, these are also very characteristic of teenage development. So it can be kind of tricky, can't it? Okay. Now, if they've got bloodshot eyes, you know, there's going to be some telltale signs. Like if they smell funny, like there's been some kind of use. Again, eyes are a good way to look at it. You know, but someone could be tired. You know what their typical behavior is. If someone usually gets bloodshot eyes when they've stayed up too late at night, then know that about their child. They need to know that so that they don't just see them one night with bloodshot eyes and accuse them of smoking marijuana. So these are just some of the ones, some of the physical symptoms. Now, the emotional symptoms, these are very classic of teenage development. Argumentative, lack of motivation, irresponsible, wanting to be alone, constant desire to be away from home. These are all typical teenage behavior because they are rebelling. They're trying to kind of stand on their own in the world. They're trying to explore the world. You know, when they're young, when they're in that elementary age, they love mom and dad. They love being at home and having family time. But when they become a teenager, that's the last thing they want. So I encourage parents to always know child development. Whatever stage of development that your child is in, know that stage, know what's coming. Because like I said, if they start to experience some of these, some of it may just be typical behavior. However, they need to know their child well enough to know whether it's typical or whether there's other things going on. Middle school and high school can be difficult because of the friends and how friends treat them. Their friends may change. Now, if they have a sudden drop in grades, they have sudden change in the type of friends they're hanging out. This is just an example, but let's say that someone who's been very athletic or they just completely drop off the team, they're just not interested anymore. To me, that would be a red flag. If someone, let's say that they've been a pretty good student, been kind of mainstream, and all of a sudden, again, I'm not trying to stereotype, but let's say that they've gone to hanging out with the drug users, the kids that are known for using drugs, or the goth kids, or whatever category you want to put them in. I'm not trying to stereotype, but you know, just anytime they have a sudden change of type of friends might be a red flag, because it's not uncommon that friends change, people change, their interests change. They may start out freshman year hanging out with one group of friends, but then, you know, by sophomore, junior year, they may be completely hanging out with others. High school especially is a time when they're really learning who they are and what group they're going to fit into. And so, again, if it's over a period of time, that's not as big of a deal. But if it's within a few weeks, You know, you notice all of a sudden they're wanting to go to so-and-so's house, any kind of dangerous or risky behavior. Because a lot of times kids will listen. They may not like it that they're being talked to, but sometimes the more you talk about it, and even if you can just throw out bits and pieces here and there, that's more effective than sitting down and saying, we're going to have a talk, okay, and having one talk and you never talk about it again. Even if parents, and I would suggest, toss out information at dinner. Toss out, like if they see something on TV, families don't eat dinner together much anymore, unfortunately, but say they're watching TV and something comes on, a commercial, or maybe it's something that's on the program they're watching, use that as an opportunity to teach something about that, to say, oh man, that guy's smoking pot, like they're watching that 70s show and the guy's smoking pot in the basement. Man, what do you think about that? Do you think that's a good idea? And just ask a question, engage them in conversation. You don't have to then go into all the details about why that might not be a good choice, or you know what's dangerous about it. But it believe it or not, it'll plant that seed. Because then if a child's ever in a position where someone's offering them marijuana, they may remember that conversation to say, you know what, I know this probably isn't the best thing to do. Maybe I'll pass this time. You just never know when you're planting the seeds. And what I like to do with teenagers, and I recommend parents do this with teenagers, it's always awkward to have that conversation. It was awkward when I was a kid, you know, so I'm just trying to pass on some advice to make sure to help with the situation. Is whether it's kids, teenagers, whatever, get them in a car and they can't go anywhere. So drive around. You know, like if you're going somewhere, especially, you know, if you got a few minutes. I mean, if you're going from here to Walmart, that's probably not the best time to start a conversation. But if you've got even a 10, 15-minute drive, you could plant that seed somehow. But yeah, they're not going anywhere, like the doors at stoplights. But more than likely, it takes away that edge because you're driving, or maybe they're driving. But you know, if you're driving and they're sitting in the seat, both of you more than likely are looking out the front. So that takes away that confrontation of the eye contact and stuff. And that's what I do with my own nieces and stuff. We'll get in the car, and we have some of our best conversations in the car. And it's not awkward. When we get out, we just continue on whatever we're doing. It's like, well, there you go. But it works. So whatever it takes to get parents to talk to their kids, and especially about big issues, I say give it a try. Yeah. I started them in the back seat, and now they moved to the front seat. So, oh yeah.
A lot of interesting things.
You do, and if you talk to them, a lot of times, especially if you've got that relationship there, kids will tell you stuff, what's going on, and I mean, I get quite an education about what's up to date stuff and what's really going on in their class or school or what so and so's doing, and it's like, well, we need to drive somewhere else. We got here too quick. We got to go somewhere else. Okay, the next sheet. This is something, and it's not a super copy, so I apologize. And I had hoped that I could retype this. And since you're kind of tailoring this, like in case parents call, I want you to fill in where it says what early childhood professionals. Anywhere that it says early childhood professional, you could put parent. Okay, because this really could be any adult even, but especially if you've got parents calling, you can use this with them. This is, again, you know, if there's a problem, they do think their child is having some kind of problem with drugs, that's going to take them in a different direction than if they maybe are questioning it, but maybe the child doesn't. You know, you could really go two different directions here. But these are just some things that the family can do, you know, teach them about the positive characteristics of their families. We've gotten away from the family model so much that, believe it or not, kids want that. We're getting ready to promote a thing called Family Day, which is September 26th, next Monday, and it's National Family Day, a day to eat dinner with your family. And what it is, we do this, and locally we're going to be providing meals for families to come and sit down and have a meal with their family. It might be pizza, but it might be the only time that some of these kids sit down with their parents. And kids love that. They want it because they don't get that. And there was actually a study that was done asking kids about what their favorite TV shows were and what they like to watch. And I don't remember the details of the study, but kids preferred watching Andy Griffith, Leave It to Beaver, some of those shows that, you know, like I grew up watching the Waltons and Andy Griffith, and I still love those shows. But what it is, the kids, they see the family model, and they see that it's a perfect family. They see that mom and dad love, you know, the Beav and and little Opie is loved by all, and they see that and they want that. That's what they crave. That's to them unfortunately, a lot of kids, that's a fantasy. They don't think that was ever real. So,
That's true.
yeah. So really focusing on the family is something is huge, because sometimes kids are gonna, if they're not getting the attention that they need at home, they're not getting the attention and the love, they're gonna find it somewhere, whether it's in drugs. That's one of the number one things with promiscuous girls, is if they're not finding that love from a father figure at home, and they were never taught those kind of things or what's appropriate behavior and things like that, they will go find it somewhere else. And so same thing with drugs. The group of kids that are the most inviting of new people at schools is the drug users, because they want people to come join in what they're doing and kind of get them hooked into what they're doing, because that may even be money for them. Depends on if they're selling and dealing. But I lost train of thought. But anyway.
Family.
Yeah, family's really important, because it's going to affect their decisions about who they hang out with, their friends, and all that. So, thank you. Mm-hmm. Just skipping down, setting the example. If mom or dad is consuming drugs, it's not going to be a big surprise if little Johnny or Susie decides that they're going to start experimenting with drugs. And a lot of times we say, even when I say drugs, we tend to think of marijuana, cocaine, crack, meth, but alcohol and tobacco are drugs too. And sometimes parents forget, if they're upset that they see, Johnny smoking cigarettes or trying marijuana. It's like, well, if that's what they're being modeled, they think that's normal. Maybe they're not interested in the cigarettes because that is normal to them. So maybe they're going to try the marijuana instead, because that's going to be more rebellious. Okay. So make sure they're modeling good behavior. Talk to them about peer pressure, what to do. And that's where you can give parents some skills and some information, because a lot of times we're trying to change this. I know in my classes, when I'm talking to students about refusal skills and how to deal with peer pressure, I talk about it, any kind of unhealthy behavior, whether it's lying, stealing, hitting someone, being a bully to someone, using a drug, experiment with it, whatever it is, they need to learn how to say no. Most of our curriculums are about how to say no to strangers if someone offers you something, but they can tell them no to that. It's telling no to your best friend. So that's the tough stuff. And having mom or dad have a conversation about it will be very helpful. Let's see. Like number 4, I'll just say parents cannot single-handedly prevent a child from having low self-esteem, but there's definitely some things that you can do. Just talking to them every day, encourage them. Even my cousin, whenever there's a major topic that comes up that her and her daughter are having a conversation about, or she'll try to tell her things, and she's got to that age where she's like, Mom, whatever, she will call me and be like, could you please talk to so-and-so about this? And I was like, sure. And she knows, we're kind of on the same page, but somehow whatever comes out of my mouth to this child is gold. Now, I could say the exact same thing that Mom has said, the day before, and she thought Mom was stupid. So make sure there's trusted adults somewhere, and that they can have a conversation with them. If mom or dad, the kid's not responsive to what mom or dad has to say, have someone that will have that conversation with them, whether it's an aunt, uncle, grandma, maybe the lady next door that is the grandma to everybody on the block.
Is there a way to rebuild that rapport?
Trust. I won't say that it can't be done, but I guess it depends on the situation, like what kind of damage has been done. But I'm thinking if a parent is calling you, then that's a good sign that they're invested in their child. They care about their child, and I would focus on that. That not so much where the slip-ups have happened and stuff, but maybe what they can do to move forward. So, yeah. But I hope that's a good resource for you. Just gives you some things. Talking about things to build their resiliency. And do you guys know what resiliency is? I know it is just amazing, because kids, I don't know what it is. I don't know if they're born with it, if it's that individual in their life that really talks to them, makes a difference to them, or what. But kids amaze me. I see kids, especially at the middle school, that will just break your heart, and I wish they didn't have to go home. I really wish that they did not have to go home in the situation that they did. But they do, and they come back the next day, and they somehow get through another day. And then you see them years later, and a lot of them, I like to think I had good relationships with them, and they remember me when I go to the high school and stuff. and it just amazes me how they survive it and they get through it. And then some of them, my first class of graduate that I had when they were 6th grade, graduated this past year. And so there's a bunch of them that have gone on to college that I never would have thought would even make it. I was very afraid that they would turn to dealing or they would somehow get caught up in things or get pregnant or something. And you just never know. So it's that resiliency. And some of the things.
Vice versa, though. You could take a child that comes from a very good home, has everything, and they turn out really bad.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. That's something because sometimes people think, well, if I'm from an affluent home, it's not going to happen to me. Well, actually, those are some of the very ones that have the bigger problem because they may be using, the more expensive, the high-class drugs, or alcohol is much more readily available. So alcohol is a big problem we have. I think it was a couple years ago, some of my coworkers went and talked to some parents that were in, I guess, associated with the more affluent group. It was at a country club also. And how ironic. Yeah, that's where they met at. Yeah. And the parents were just like blown away that this was even a problem or that it could be a problem with their children. So sometimes parents just don't know, but it can absolutely happen to any group. It does not discriminate. Addiction does not discriminate age, color, sex, whatever. Okay, so it can happen. Thank you for adding that in. The orange sheet's talking about the resiliency. These are just some of the things that can give you some tips as far as how to build that resiliency in children. The positive relationships, having the high expectations. Kids are going to rise to whatever expectation you give them. So if it's down here, they're going to meet that expectation. But if you have it up here, they're going to meet that one also. Getting them involved with things, whether it's at church, whether it's a community, whether it's just hanging out with a positive peer group. It might be that you get a group of kids together, go play basketball, or you take the kids to a movie, or you just take them for a ride. Something that gives them something to do that can be a positive thing. Having responsibilities, believe it or not, this kind of goes back to kids do not want, they don't want the discipline, they don't want structure, they don't want these things. However, that's exactly what they crave. But as their nature, their development, they're going to naturally rebel against that. So by giving them structure, giving them guidelines, rules, discipline, even though they may not like it, that's exactly what they need and what they want. So they're never going to tell you that. But
keeps telling me, this is hard.
Yeah.
Especially when they're
Oh, it is. I have a new puppy, and it's driving me nuts, and I'm just like, consistency. And puppies and dogs, animals, whatever, are a lot like kids. I'm still struggling with the puppy. But it's so true, is you got to do these things, and we know it. We know that this stuff works. It's just a matter of doing it and being consistent. And if you provide that structure, just like kids, a lot of times in school, not everyone, but some kids respond well to having structure in school, and they will do fine. But it's when they get home and it's chaos at home that they just lose their mind, But when they come back to school, I've seen it, especially elementary kids. Like if I call mom or dad and I talk to them about little Susie, and they're going, "Is that my kid?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it is." And it might be a good phone call or just an update if they're making progress with their situation. And I say, "Well, this is what so and so's doing now," and they're just like, "What? He still comes home and tears up things every night," And I'm like, "Well, where's the structure?" And so the kid's going to respond to the better of the environments, if that makes sense. Because kids like predictability. If they know how so-and-so is, if they know that this is my consequence for my action, they tend to respond to that because they're going to learn, maybe if I don't like that consequence, I shouldn't do this action. Or at home, if they don't know if 1 minute someone's going to be loving to them, or 1 minute they're going to hit them, or 1 minute they're going to yell at them, they never know what to expect. And so it makes it a very insecure environment for them. Okay. The last three things are just resources. If you've got anybody that, whether adult, child, whatever, is calling and maybe you're questioning or they're questioning whether or not there's any kind of problem, there's two different resources, because what may work for one may not work for the other, so you can decide. One is front and back, and then the other one is just some questions you can ask. And you can fill in any drug here for the 12 questions. Has using marijuana stopped being fun? Did you ever get high alone? You know, and I would incorporate these into conversation rather than so much going, let me ask you 12 questions really quickly. The drinking and drugging sub-question is something. It's just a little bit longer. Depends on how much information you want. And then the last one, this one's talking about marijuana, but it helps them to really focus about if they're talking about wanting to quit, helping them to figure out a kind of a plan, and it might be a plan to go get help even. So that is it. Do we have any questions?
No, you explained it very well.
You're probably overloaded with information. But again, I like to make sure you have lots of resources
Oh, no, that's
available.
Tell them about the magic markers and the.
Oh, inhalants.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, this is another thing we're seeing. This mostly happens with middle school age kids, just because they don't really have access to getting marijuana and the more hardcore drugs. They may or may not have access to alcohol, but they have access to markers and glue and maybe spray paint and hairspray and things like that. And the inhalant that I'm talking about is what people will, like, they'll sniff markers to get high. And what happens is they're breathing in different chemicals, and those fumes can go to the brain, and it affects the way then the body feels. Usually it's a very short-lived high, matter of maybe even 2 to 3 minutes. The scary part is people can die instantly from the very first time they use it. There's a couple different types. There's huffing, there's bagging, sniffing. Like if you're sniffing a marker, or you're sniffing something because it has a strong smell to it. They're sniffing it, and when I say sniff, it's one thing if you just smell something and you're going, and I hate, these markers aren't like this. There are markers out there that are now like blueberry flavored and cherry flavored and lime flavored based on the color. I hate those markers because that encourages people to smell them. And you give those to a kid, they're going,
yeah, they're going to do that anyway.
yeah.
That smells good.
And these markers are readily available at school. They can steal the dry erase markers right off the teacher's boards. Glue is available at school. There's all kinds of products. And a lot of times, this is stuff you can get at Walmart. Sharpies, I know it was a couple years ago now, I was working on a project with some students, and I went and bought a big pack of Sharpies, and they ID'd me because thankfully they're on the list now. If you're under 18, you can't go in and buy them by yourself. You're not supposed to. Whiteout is the same way. You can't buy whiteout by yourself. That's another item they like to sniff. There's several things, and unfortunately, cashiers can just go, whatever, But you're supposed to have an adult with you, and kids are going to figure out a way around it. They really will. But the idea is to stop kids from coming in and buying, 6 packs of Sharpies and like Dust Off is another one. The spray, compressed air, which is really different because people have the misunderstanding of with the Dust Off. That's just one particular brand, but any of those keyboard cleaners, they have a little straw on them, and usually, people will, they think, well, it's just air, it's just compressed air in a can. But in order for that air to come out of the can, there has to be a propellant, which is a toxin. And so I've seen kids running around spraying it at each other because they think they're just spraying air on each other, but really you're spraying the chemicals at them. And so it can be really dangerous. But that's not so much as bad as if a person is actually, they put it up to their nose and they're sniffing it or huffing it. Huffing it's when they breathe it in their mouth. Yeah, they're huffing it that way. Bagging is a way they may put the chemical, whether it's paint or whatever chemical it is, they may put it in the bag and then put the bag up and seal it around them, and then they'll breathe it in. Well, the thing is, you could pass out from that. You could die from that, and you'd have a bag on your head. So kids love that. They don't want they don't want to die like that. So they're like, oh no, that's stupid. The kids are doing it. Did you have a question? I'm sorry. Oh, okay. So sniffing, huffing, bagging, people get creative with this stuff. Paint is a big one. The shinier the paint, like your metallics, your golds, and your silvers, tend to be the ones that have the highest potency of the chemicals. The toluene, I think is what it is. Let's see. It can cause sudden sniffing death, SSD, sudden sniffing death, where a person can use it one time and the chemicals, it cuts off oxygen to the brain. And just like if we don't have oxygen, we might could last a few seconds, few minutes without oxygen, but ultimately we could have brain damage, we could die from it. So if you're cutting off oxygen to your brain by sniffing or huffing a chemical, you're cutting off that oxygen and replacing it with a chemical, and that's how it can happen.
Most of them though, with the huffing and everything, they have like sores, don't they?
They do.
Normally you can tell.
Some, they do. A classic, and we've seen pictures where people will come into the emergency room, they'll have paint here, and they're so out of it, like they don't even know they have paint all over their face, and they're just like, I don't feel good. It's going.
Wonder why.
Yeah, but it's good to know, like, because if a person is using a whole lot of dust off, if someone, because people can use it not just for their computer keyboard, but they can use it like working with, like model airplanes or putting stuff, little things that have little parts. People can use it for all kinds of things to clean things and stuff. But if they're going through a whole lot of that or a whole lot of any particular chemical, that's a concern. That's a red flag. I'm trying to think if there's any. Loretta, did I kind of hit on what you're talking about? I'm trying to think if there's anything else I need to add.